Yeah,
Hello,
yeah, let's get started,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're ZEN EB5, and we are so grateful to have the Fong Lee here from KLDP to answer your questions today. And I actually was able to gather, as Baplesh was saying, a few questions that I actually got directly from people that we're talking to, potential investors, and I hope that this session is beneficial for all of you. Again, we are recording this, so please do reach out to me if you'd like me to send you the recording. We'd be happy to do that, and I think let's get started so we don't waste time. The first question I have is a lot of people are confused about what the grandfathering deadline means, and if you could please explain that to us.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you, Buplesh. Thank you, Rima, for putting this together. I know it's never an easy thing. You have to hunt down people, gather interest and everything else. So, we're happy to be here to help. As for those of you who don't know me, I am Feng Lei from KLDP. My partner Neural can't join today, but it's okay because we are essentially the same person. We will give you the same answer. There's no point in asking us separately, right? And I'm here to answer. Let's just treat this as like an open office hours. I'm not big on formalities, so whatever comes in, I'm happy to answer them. In terms of grandfathering, let's make this easy, right? Because it is, so the good news is this, grandfathering is a very straightforward concept. And it's a straightforward concept in a good way. Um, Rarely in life does something work out in your favor without you having to do very much. The concept is very simple. Um, so long as you or anybody here files their case before September 2026, your case is essentially locked in under the current EB5 program, under current EB5 rules. Meaning, essentially, the easiest way to think about it is the day that you file, um, you are locked into the rules of the program. You're protected from any changes. The government cannot screw with you. They cannot increase the investment amount. It's you want to put it on a high level. It's almost like you are agreed for your $800,000 investment that you filed before September 2026. You are locking in your deal, right? So they can't increase the price later on. Even if the program disappears, you and your family are still guaranteed to get a green card under the rules of this program. Um, and that's rare because very, very rarely in law, much less immigration, you get grandfathering. So you do have it here, and it's here to benefit you. You don't have to do anything special, nothing else other than filing before September 2026. One related question that's come up a couple times is, should I do a full or partial investment for grandfathering? I think as it is right now, it's safest, if possible, it's safest to do a full filing if possible. There is an argument to be made that even if you do a partial investment and you fund the remaining amount, say within 2, 3 months, you should still be locked in. But I think the safest bet is just simply to fully fund and file before September 2026. So.
And then a follow-up question that we get is then what is the significance of September 2027?
Okay, and then before I answer that, let me just answer the related question in the Q&A. Um, In terms of what I mean before filing before September 2026, yes. I mean, so long as your 526E is filed before that date, you're locked in, right? Your eligibility is locked in. For those of you in the US, effectively, we would be concurrent filing your case anyways. So, yes. Rima, the associated question though. So we keep talking about September 2026, but everyone knows that the program runs from September 2022 to uh, essentially 2027. So why do we keep bringing up this date, right? That seems bizarre. It's a year before. Um, and the answer to that is not quite straightforward, but it's also kind of funny. So the RIA is unique because it's really the second time we've had a change in EB5 law. There's not a lot of changes in EB5 law in general if you've been involved. I've been doing this, like I said, like 20 years or so, right? Um, so the first time the industry really went up against Congress to try to get an extension was around, again, 2021, 2020. And to be honest with you, it's the first time we as an industry really were drafting a law. It was Congress mostly driving the conversation. It was Congress mostly drafting the bills and everything else. And so what's funny is I always thought that when you work with when just being on Capitol Hill, being part of the lobbying process. And Bhupesh, we joined one of these Capitol Hill meetings before too. What you find out is, this storied institution, Washington, D.C., Senate, House of Representatives, it's not unlike high school in some ways, right? There's a lot of whispers, a lot of things being passed around. So the thing with grandfathering is, um, grandfathering was never really a controversial concept. I think the concept of you filing for something, locking your eligibility, and the rules don't change on you is fundamentally it's a legal concept that exists in contract law across the board. But in terms of how did that September 2026 date get in there when the program expires 2027, a lot of us actually think that that may possibly be a typo from Congress, that they just never updated. So the other thing that you should know about drafting legislation is it's a rapid fire process up to the last minute, right? I remember probably that last week before the EB5 bill became legislation, we were looking at different drafts or different red lines probably two, three times a day, right? So, and and even up to the last minute, one of the things that changed, which a lot of people don't know about, was at one point the actual investment amount was 600,000. It wasn't 800,000. That was actually 11th hour change. So that, along with things like September 2026, we think is actually a typo. Now, that being said, we are already in discussions with Congress about extending the program. I can't speak too much about it because, again, this is a work in progress. But even the conservatives, even grassroots officers reached out. We've begun the conversation. And so far, one of the things that they mentioned so far is I mean, Congress thinks, although it's not a guarantee, extending the September 2026 deadline is almost like a no-brainer for them. They'll certainly work on that. But what we also have pleasantly heard is that they are also on board with working on reauthorization sooner rather than later. So hopefully we get news about that soon
Yeah.
too.
So I went to the DC about a month ago with IUSA, and
Nice.
definitely we met many congressmen, senators, and also one team went to the White House. We did not hear any pushback from anyone. They said if the bill comes in for reauthorization, they will be happy to take it forward. So I think in general, everybody agrees that this is a great program which needs to continue. As long as there are no radical changes brought in at this point and just a reauthorization, so they should be good with that.
Yeah. And so one thing we've kind of it's interesting because first of all, to anyone that's wondering, I think the Gold Card is a ridiculous program, right? It's a comically bad program put together. If nothing else, it shows you how well thought out. I mean, traditionally, the biggest investment markets in the world, right, have been China and India. So why would you create an investment program where on day one you lock out China and India? Makes no sense. But the one thing that was good about this whole Gold Card program, and then, we were just kind of joking, not joking about it, is it has actually normalized this concept of investment immigration, right? Even in the America First agenda, even in the Red Hat MAGA world, investment immigration is a normal concept now. And I never thought that would have been so easy, or this would even been a real thing that they would even concede. But because Trump's on board with it, we're not really getting pushback on the concept of investment immigration. Let's talk about people buying green cards and more talk about how do we maximize or change this program so it benefits America.
Great.
And
Great.
so that absolutely. But I'm going to read a longer question that we have. For someone filing an I-526E at the end of February, can you estimate the expected timelines for rural HUA and infrastructure categories? And then there's a part two. Also, since the latest FOIA data is available only until July 2025, what Q consumption are you assuming from July 2025 to now? And what formula or assumptions are you using, such as visa demand, spillover, and per country usage?
I'm not answering this question. First of all, like if you guys want to go down this road and really dive into this question, first of all, I think any of these forecasts are like they're based on a lot of assumptions, right? And this question, to be fair, if you really want to deep dive on this question, there have been multiple articles that have been in depth, right? And this deserves its own really webinar if you want to dive into it. I also think it's not going to help you with your project selection. So a classic, the related question to this is this, right? What people have been saying all along. So from day one, if you have ever talked to us, our advice when it comes to selecting a project has been pretty consistent. We have essentially told our investors to ignore the reserve category and pick the best available project that's available to you at any given time. It doesn't matter really to us whether it's rural, high unemployment, or infrastructure. Um, and the reason why is that any assumptions, any forecasts about the backlog are is exactly that. It's a forecast. It's a guess. So many people really focus so there's so much focus on the first part of any backlog, but not the second. The first part of any backlog is limited supply, right? And a lot of demand. But there's no real good way of getting up to date, like usage, what categories are being used. Even in like around last year, you saw that what they're really doing is using a lot of the unreserved category. So what we have always told people, and the other thing that's ironic is there's obviously, I think in year one of the RIA, there's a lot of like HUA investors, especially from India. Then there was, and I'm saying this both from our firm's experience with filing cases, and also, I mean, look, we compete with a number of firms in the industry, but by and large, I mean, the firms nowadays are mostly cordial. We're friends with a lot of even our competitors, right? Um, there's been a significant swing the other way into rural projects, right? And so what we were actually thinking, and what a lot of even our regional center friends and partners were saying is, if there is a backlog in the future, it's gotten to the point where if there is one, it wouldn't be surprising, not a guarantee, it wouldn't be surprising if the backlog was actually in rural of all places, right? Simply because, again, be careful what you wish for. You want cases being approved faster, visas being issued, and so from what we're seeing, it's the real visas being issued. But all that aside, you can go down this rabbit hole forever and drive yourself crazy. I think what it is you pick a project that you're at peace with. Like, look, your real deadline is to file for a project before any kind of backlog, retrogression period, right? Your real goal is to live your life in the US uninterrupted, be in a position where your green card is essentially guaranteed, have your EAD and AP eligibility there, and the real focus is, I think at this point most of us assume that there's going to be some sort of backlog, right? It's not crazy, we just don't know when. So if that's the case, what can you control? One thing you can definitely control is to be in a project or select a project that probably has a higher chance of paying you back early. So what I actually forecast is this, and I'm just waiting for it to happen, right? It
Yeah.
would not surprise me if and Bhupesh, this is my guess. I don't know about you, but probably in the next 6 months or year, what you're going to see is actually projects paying back people even before they've gotten their permanent green card, before the 829 approvals. And I guarantee you, the people, like, once that happens, even the people who are backlogged, right, who are just here waiting for their party date to become current, they would be very happy if they get their money back and the EB5 is on the way, right? So I just want you to think about these different scenarios before, you people. I'm not saying, look, if you like a rural, you like a high employment, you like an infrastructure, sure. We personally have investors in all three. We structure projects in all three categories. But again, it's the project quality that matters the most, right? Unless the developer is a complete idiot nowadays, the regional center is borderline malpractice. Almost any project out there should say clearly and be able to say cleanly why your green card is more or less guaranteed. So that's why we always say focus on repayment. And I would
Yeah.
advise all you guys here do the same thing.
Yep.
That's great advice.
Actually, just to add a little bit to that, like when Reem and I have conversations with investors regarding this HUA or rural, I just tell them one thing: the category is not going to pay you back. The project will,
Yes.
right? So eventually, whether it's a rural or HUA, you will get approved. There might be a few months delay in one category versus other, but if the project is strong and is able to have a very good exit strategy, then they should be able to pay you back in time. And that's what your first criteria should be, because immigration will come with its own timeline anyways. Like there's nothing an RC or a developer can do about it. Uh, However, I also, I believe in patience and just to add to it, like today, we got our last EB5 project approved while we were getting so many calls about this project. Hey, it has been pending for so long. Why don't you file mandamuses? And said, mandamus is not a tool I recommend or I do every day. I don't think it's required. I'm very certain I'll get approved, and that's what happened. We got approval today. So maybe sometimes just wait, let the immigration take its own path, like its own time. You don't have
How
to
long
rush
did
for
it,
it.
how long was it pending? How long was it pending, Bhupesh?
Uh 9 months.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all either, you know?
Yeah.
So, so there's not a lot of data on, I mean, there is data from IUSA and some other sources about how long 956Fs take. And it's funny because again, so it's kind of unique because I've been in this industry forever, right? And then it used to be that so what the industry is seeing now is kind of unprecedented. Like it used to be that we would raise EB5 money, we would represent clients, but you would never have the level of interaction or real-time updates that you do now, right? In today's kind of like 24/7 world. I think part of what I think is helpful for investors to understand is that, like, to be honest with you guys, the world of law and the world of real estate development is incredibly boring for the most part, right? We're not going to have, it's not, this is not Sports Center, right? It's not like an NBA game or a soccer match. There are no play-by-play updates, right? So I understand like a lot of times you want to know what's going on and stuff like that, but it's not really that clean cut or simple. Uh, Based on the data I've seen for 956F's approval, the vast majority of them are actually being approved over 12 months, over 14 months, which I find surprising. So Bhupesh, yours is faster. To be honest with you, our projects have been routinely approved in under 6 months. I'm not going to say I mean, sometimes it's luck, right? I'm not going to say it's all us, but it's all over the board. And so there's nothing like if your project is closer to 8, 9, 10 months for a 956F, that's not unusual either for a lot of these projects, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I
plus,
think I,
Well,
I think we were just spoiled because our current offering, for which we have two spots left, everybody, was approved in under 80 days. And
oh, there
so
you
I
go.
think,
Yeah,
yeah, and so
there's
I
always
think we saw
outliers.
that. Yeah, exactly, all over. And so I think that's why we were like, oh, what's happening? Today, I was having a call with the pledge because our current project is closing. And I was like, oh my God, and what are we going to do? We don't have the approval. And in general, I don't like to market a project that's not approved, right? I don't want to talk to people and then, take it back. And we have a current offering, so but it's closing. It's closing probably in the next few weeks. But that's just a side note. So here is the next question, which I think you are the perfect person to answer. I've been hearing people get RFEs for using their SDIRA. Is it safe to use my SDIRA? Is there anything we should take into account while doing this?
Yeah, let me be very straightforward with this again. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Neural and I we came up with this concept for the SDRA, right? We created the whole SDRA investment structure. We worked closely with Alto IRA actually to help train them on what documents and stuff we would need. Personally, as a firm, we have no issue with people using SDRAs. And the other problem is what we have always cautioned people is that, you know, in today's world, there's always a rush that if there's an RFE or a NOID or whatnot, to just to just shoot it out there or try to analyze it. And what's also dangerous sometimes is even, everyone we tell people not to do, but we know what happens. Running Gemini, running ChatGPT on it, trying to get some insights, right? Because the problem there is, first of all, that's not a good way to do it, right? Second of all, you're violating confidentiality. But third of all, I think the biggest problem we have is that there's a lot of times just an assumption that whatever USCIS asks for is correct. No, it's not correct. USCIS is wrong all the time, right? Um, we have no issue with the SDRAs. We created it, and not only that, but yes, we have seen the RRVs. Yes, we have seen the noise, right? Yes, we have responded to them. Yes, we have been hired by other firms to make the response for them. Yes, we've been hired by regional centers to respond to them. We have been approved at every single level. The SDRAs, so the thing is this, there's always a possibility of a RFE or a NOID, right? Whenever things pop up. Um, But like the real question I have in my mind is whether this is like quote like is this an education moment for USIS? Are they completely wrong, or how do we have to structure this, right? Was there something risky about it? And what we find out from these RFEs and noise, right, is that essentially in none of the RFEs or noise that we've seen has USIS questioned whether SDRAs are legitimate. They have not questioned whether you can use a custodial account to invest into EB5. Not one time. What they have actually questioned is something much more funny, actually. Um, they are essentially asking, um, for someone to be an SDRA provider, right? An SDRA account. Are they licensed and able to actually issue these accounts, right? And I think that's incredibly comical because it's like issuing an RFE to Fidelity or Vanguard asking, like, are you licensed to be able to issue a brokerage account, right? It's like, what are you talking about? And in fact, like, so in our responses, what we explain to them is if you essentially open up your if you do spend like a 5 minute Google search, by the way, you will find out that yes, they are licensed. Yes, if you talk to them, you find out yes, they are licensed. They're licensed by the trustee of the state of New Mexico. They have all the documents available. They've been in business for over 10 years. They have $30 billion under assets, right? Assets under management. We responded to them. They've been approved. I don't have an issue. I know other firms still do, right? And I will question why did they have an issue with that when USC has never questioned whether you can use a custodial account. By the way, this for some a history lesson, this is not even the first time we or even the industry has used a custodial account. There were instances in the past for where for variety of reasons we've had to allow a minor to subscribe into an offering, right? So Bhupesh, if you guys had like an investor who was 13 or 14, and there's a question whether you could do it legally. And the answer to that was if we basically set up a structure where the parent was the custodian and signed on behalf of the investor, then the investor would still be legit, right? It still should be okay. All those cases that we did from the 526 to 829 stage, and that was well over 100, by the way, were all approved. And so
Yeah.
back then, every single regional center out there had no problems accepting that money, right? Back then, every single law firm out there had no problems going with that argument. All of a sudden now, with you guys, with US based income, with all this stuff, now all of a sudden everyone that has cold feet makes no sense to me.
Yep, I got it. And in fact, you said it right. STIRA historically has been used in investments for a very long time. Like we have been dealing with STIRA for our non-EB5 investments for over a decade now. So it's not like STIRA is not allowed. It just like there was one organization which was questionable, which is again very funny because they have been doing this business for a long time, and it just feel a little bit immature on the USCIS part of not doing their due diligence on such things.
And then I have a similar question for margin loans. Are there any recommendations for funding through margin loans?
I would strongly consider it. Unless you like paying capital gains, unless you like paying a lot of money. And also today, I mean, it's especially you hold tech stock, it's not a fun time to sell, right? Exception if you have Google. Everything else kind of sucks right now. I don't want to sell. So I've always thought of margin loans, and even I discussed this with my wife. We have a portfolio, we have a brokerage, but oftentimes the best way to access the money is not to actually sell, right? And again, we're not financial advisors, we are not tax people. I'm just approaching this from a common sense standpoint of someone who wants to access cash without having to pay taxes, right? You guys can have your own advisors here, but I think for the most part, everyone here is smart enough to understand what to do. Um, I have no issue with people taking margin loans, right? The by and large, most people are taking a margin from an established brokerage account. I mean, Robinhood and Interactive Brokers have the best rates. Otherwise, sometimes people use Fidelity, they use Schwab. Sometimes those two brokerages will rate match essentially, right? With outside groups. Um, Same, by the way, same logic applies to securities backed lines of credit, right? It's always where the money's coming from. It's out. So the only caveat I have here is so long as you can prove how you funded your initial brokerage account, I don't really have an issue with how you guys are accessing your money.
Okay, so this is a little bit different. My son is 17 years old. Are there any risks that he may not be included on my application because he ages out if I'm looking to fund in the spring?
Yeah. So today we're getting all the fun questions all at once, right? So okay. So look, it's a good question and it's an important question because, and part of it is because the way USCS has kind of dealt with the age out provisions and C-split protections is a little bit unclear now. So if you are going to move forward with this, one thing that you're going to have to be comfortable with is you're not going to exactly have a clear answer, right? Um, the reality is going to be that so prior to what August 2025, they were it was pretty clear. So long as you concurrently file before then, it's fine, right? You're locked in. Not only is your child's age stopped like a stopwatch, you throw away the stopwatch forever. Easy, right? Now, though, after August 2025, it's unclear because what USCIS has said is, the child's age is essentially locked in on the date that a visa is first available, right? According to the visa bulletin. Problem is, we don't know whether that refers to a visa being available at the time of 45 filing or 45 adjudication, which would be when the 526E is approved. Um, I can give you I'll give you both a legal and a pragmatic reason why. So it is unclear. That much is true, and it's one of those things where you ask a bunch of attorneys, you get whatever answer in the middle. But I feel pretty strongly that in the end, investors who are filing, even with 17, 18, 19 year olds, should ultimately be okay. First of all, there's no real good reason of why they're treating families and children differently from before and after August 2025, right? Especially when they're not really making it clear. So if later down the line, all of a sudden they make this weird policy change almost on a dime of like, well, what we meant was 45 adjudication. I guarantee you the first thing that's going to happen is a massive lawsuit, right? Asking, and the court will essentially ask them, what is your basis for treating these two groups of families different, right? Well, like, why is this necessary or whatnot? Um, on top of that, everyone who's a parent, right, knows that the one of the fastest ways to piss off a group of parents is just try to take their children away. There's no world where there's not going to be immediate backlash. We have friends with very good immigration litigation firms. They're gearing up to sue if that policy is announced. The last thing that's even easier. So the thing is this: even with that policy change, right? Even if it is 45 adjudication, there's actually no guarantee they'll even do it that way. So again, somewhat of a history lesson. For those of you who, let's go back to the last time EB5 was backlogged for India. This is pre-RI, right? I'm thinking probably 2018, 2019 or so. And India was backlogged by all estimates, like what, 6, 7-ish years. So back then, what happened was one day the Department of State woke up and they announced that they are now moving from a first in, first out approach to a visa availability approach. And the visa availability approach was very powerful because, so we always give the government, USCIS, DOS, a lot of grief because their policies can be kind of nonsensical or arbitrary. But sometimes they come up with a good one, and this is a good one. What they said was, instead of first in, first out, we're going to do visa availability. So essentially, each month, when it comes time to adjudicate your case, we will look to see whether EB5 is current for India or for any other country. If it is not current, what we will do is we simply just hold your case. We will hold your case until EB5 is current again. Once it's current, at that time, what we will do is we will finally adjudicate your case. Why would they do this? They are doing this essentially with the express goal of preventing people's children from aging out. It's one of the most straightforward, pragmatic, and I think just, that was a good policy, right? Because there's nothing they have to do. There's nothing they have to change. All they have to do is just look at the visa bulletin and just simply a matter of sitting on it. There's no reason why they can't do it again this time, right? Especially because the other reason why they would probably want to do this besides family unification is let's be real here. If you look at the breakdown for USCS, it's very obvious that EB5 contributes a substantial chunk of filing fees to the operating budget. They are incentivized in a weird way to prevent people from aging out, and this is one way that they would do it. So, for both legal and practical reasons, that's why.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a question about partial payment or installments on EB5. Do you think that it can in any way be negative for my application? And what do you recommend as a time frame for when my entire investment should have gone through for the
Sure.
installment plan?
So again, the thing you'll hear me say time and time again that EB5 law and law in general, most agency-driven law, does not change very much, right? What changes actually is the agency's policies, their focus, their adjudication techniques, right? And so partial investments have always been accepted in EB5, even before pre-RA. Um, Post-RA, in fact, not only are they accepted, they updated their forms specifically to allow for partial investments and funding timelines. But what we have seen in the last 3 or 6 months, not just us, but our friends and colleagues at other firms, is USCS is being more aggressive with partial investments. They're being aggressive with, and a part of the fight or the battle comes from how are you establishing whether people are really actively in the process of investing, right? So we have this weird tension between, on one hand, USCIS overall has been much more anti-immigrant, I think. They a lot of times like if I mean you can't turn on the TV without reading about ICE, right? And so they see themselves as a weird pseudo enforcement or police agency. On the other hand, for whatever reason, 526Es and for the most part 45s are being adjudicated faster than in all honesty in my 20 years of doing this, right? And I think it's very bizarre because I'm like, where is this coming from? But yeah, so it's like if you are going to do so, number one, if you're going to do partial investments, it's possible. However, if you're going to do, there's some new rules that you should be aware of, right, to prevent RFEs, nors, or even outright denials. What we always recommend is there's usually going to be a funding letter, a side letter with the NCE. That date, that funding deadline should be farther in the future, even with the intention of you funding much faster. What we have told people is if you're doing a partial investment, I don't have an issue with your actual initial amount, but I have an issue with when you fund the rest. Ideally, it's going to be 6 months or less, 3 months or less to be safe for all I care, right? What because in the past, the reason why is simply as this. In the past, if USCS picked up your case, and you weren't fully funded, usually all they would do is issue an RFE or NOID asking for the rest of the funding. That's what they've done historically for years and years and years and years. Nowadays, what they're doing is, and actually now that I think about it, it's not even really because of a partial investment issue. What they're taking the stance is if your entire petition is not fully complete with all the quote unquote requested evidence at the time of filing, they have the discretion to not even issue an RFE and just outright deny. And so some officers are really leaning on that, right? So to prevent that, what we have been recommending people is, again, with partial investments, at the time of filing, have a realistic deadline, ideally within 3 to 6 months. Your sources of funding should be identified, right? Your funding timeline should be in the future, with the goal of funding the rest in 3 to 6 months to be safe, anyways, right? I think if you're so not, you can still do it, but it's just more limited now. That's all.
Thank you. I
Also,
have
I think there is one more thing which I actually educate my investors is don't do too many installments because every time you make an installment, the attorney has goes through the SOF and that could
Yeah,
take time. So either be like,
yeah. There's no need to make multiple installments. Just do two,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, somebody asked me this question, how many installments should I do monthly? I said,
No,
it makes no sense.
I would say
Makes
do
no sense.
two, right? Like you don't get
Yeah,
any bonus points. Like even though you can fund 50,000 a month, 100,000 a month, just make one, right?
yeah,
It's easier for
yeah,
us. It's easier for USCS. It doesn't. You don't get bonus points for making installment payments.
that's right.
I
and
agree.
then I have a question, but I think this is more geared toward Bhuplesh. How robust are the
Great.
I-526E uh, denied refund guarantees for the bigger regional centers? Do they generally refund, or is your money stuck for a period of time if denied?
Are they
Well,
asking Bangladesh for another regional center's refund policy? That's
We can
hilarious.
at least
That's
talk
what I
about
was about to
ours.
say. Like, I cannot say what other regional centers are promising them. Like, I have no say in that game. The only thing is I can talk
You
about is
don't
what
control other
Zen is.
regional centers? I
Yep.
thought you were powerful. What's wrong with you?
Well, we only talk about what we can do is like we do provide 526E denial refund guarantee, which means that if your petition is denied, absolutely denied, not RFE, not no, it's but absolutely final decision, then we return your money in 90 days, and that's the guarantee with that. However, there is a clause in between that there should not be any fraudulent activity on your side. Like you must not have intentionally hide any information which USCIS is using as a basis for the denial. For example, there is no criminal record, there is no tax frauds, nothing like that. Then yes, we do provide guarantees, and we are very much doing it. Like we can talk one on one on that. Like what's the basis of this guarantee?
Yeah. Um,
All right.
that's helpful, Bhupesh. And for, I mean, by and large, right? So I think Bhupesh brings up a good point, which is that there is no standard, right, among regional centers. And I say this as someone who's reviewed more offerings than I would care to probably remember, right? And who structures offerings. The devil's always in the details, right? So Bhupesh is if you are outright denied, so Bhupesh, if it sounds like if you're outright denied, and absent any misrepresentation, fraud, lying, whatever else, you'd be refunded within 90 days, right?
Yeah.
I would highly recommend that for each of you guys discuss with your attorneys, discuss with the projects to get the exact details because it is not standardized, right? Some are going to be
Mhm.
based on replacement investors. Like they'll say 90 days, but they need to fund replacement investors. Some have a reserve account. Some have an insurance policy that helps pay it outright. Everybody is a little bit different, right? But it's more like you should think about whether how likely it is that they'll be able to execute. Some will even say that if we have an offering that's been open for more than a year, the replacement investor and the refund provision is no longer available even. So again, devil's in the details. So it's not something that's useful to ask in a general way. It's more useful to ask targeted.
And then a
Yep.
follow-up for Bhuplesh. Bhuplesh, could you please share details about the regional center you are affiliated to?
Well, we are ZEN EB5. We are not a regional center. We are the NC manager and the development. And that's where your money is coming from, not the regional center. So I am part of that group. We do, for compliance purposes, we do need a regional center, and our regional center is EB5 coast to coast. But they are not involved in any kind of financial decisions. Everything is remaining with us.
All right. And then this is a good question because I get this on every call, and I think this is a my source of funds is very simple. All money earned in the US on W-2s. How long should my source of fund work take with my attorney?
That's so the running joke within our firm and within other firms is there's no bigger red flag than my source of funds is really simple. Sure. You may think so, right? But we haven't seen anything. We haven't reviewed the documents or whatever else. Again, these are case by case decisions, right? And so what we have actually found out sometimes is like, first of all, look, 90% of cases are going to be like US based income nowadays, right? Especially your H-1B. That doesn't make you any different than anyone else. But what you're discounting is, I don't know where your money's saved and what it counts. Even you have it, like even if you're a person that for whatever reason, right, have decided to put all your money into your savings accounts for all these years, checking savings, checking savings. What you may or may not know is that you have large deposits in it. You still have to go through and explain all those, right? And who among us doesn't have like a bunch of like Zelle, Venmo, Cash App transactions, loans to friends and family, all those things, right? And so without knowing that, I have no idea what to know whether your source of funds is simple or not. My last point is, it was really that simple. You would need an attorney, right? So I would say for those, if you're really interested, just go schedule a consultation with an attorney to find out.
This is kind of attached to that. Paperwork wise for source of funds. Is every pay stub also necessary for a source of funds, or are bank statements, W-2s, and tax returns enough?
Um, this is easier. I wouldn't say every single pay stub is necessary. Look, what you're going to have is so pay stubs are helpful, right? I usually ask for really the last 6 months, but if you have a year, sure. But at the very least, what we will need to see is W-2. So W-2s and tax returns, yes, right? The W-2s will tell us what your salary actually was, including any bonuses or whatnot. Tax returns will show you. So people ask like, why can't I do one and or why don't they show all three of them, right? Because all three of them show different things, right? The
Mhm.
W-2 or the 1099 will show what you actually earned that year. The tax return will show what that you actually paid taxes on it, right? And the actual bank statements will show the actual accumulation of it. Because again, it's not enough to just show that you earn, say, $300,000 on W-2. Because part of it is not you get 300 net, and on top of that, you have expenses, right? We don't know if you are actually accumulating that money in one account or moving it around like most of us do. So therefore, we need all three at least.
All right. Should you maintain H-1B status even after getting your EAD? Is there a downside to giving up your H-1B?
I think there isn't so much a downside, but it depends on your risk tolerance, right? And I think really what we're seeing is, and it's been affected by how aggressive this administration is. I think if you want to be safe, and this is a really easy way to protect yourselves, um, I think if you, it's first of all, yes, you file for the EAD and AP, right? Even you tend to stay on the H, but a lot more people nowadays are choosing to stay on the H with the EAD and AP as backup, right? So you can always use it if you want to, but a lot of people feel like, well, who knows? Because USCIS can be kind of arbitrary sometimes. Who knows if they'll issue some sort of weird like denial? So to be safe, I'll just stay on the H, and then later, and if I want to use the EAD or AP in the future, I'll also be there. So so it's more like, look, if you like your employer, you know you're going to stay with them. Might as well stay for the H. They'll follow the extension for you anyways, right? So why not? Um, if you absolutely cannot stand them, you've been laid off for whatever reason or whatnot, though, you're fine with going to the EAD AP too, you know? So again, speak to your attorneys about your individual situation. I honestly think both are okay.
A follow-up. Is pending AOS a legal status if my H-1B is expiring soon and my EAD is not yet approved?
Pending AOS is actually a period of authorized stay, right? Because there's always this distinction between is it legal status, is it, a visa, whatever. It's a weird in between where it's a period of authorized stay where you are authorized to stay here, right? So it's not legal status per se, but essentially having pending AOS is allows you to stay here legally, right? But you don't really get status until it's actually approved. So for those of you concerned, this is another reason why people may or may not want to stay in an H-1B. But even if you don't, so long as you file before you're eligible, you're still okay, you know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussions I see recently with some interviews happening in the detention centers in the ICE where people were have their pending US and they were detained by ICE. And there was a statement released by one of the spokesperson from DHS that saying pending status is not a legal means you cannot stay in US with a pending US, which totally bullshit to me.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you, Blue Plush. But the other thing is this, right? Again, they are giving this statement from an ICE facility, right? First of all,
Hmm.
again, never discount. Like, look, there are lots of good government employees, lots of good adjudicators, but there's also lots of wrong ones, right? And so I never, to this day, I don't understand why sometimes people will get RFEs or whatever else and assume that they screwed up versus USCIS screwed up, right? Why can't it be USCIS screwed up or they're wrong? Second of
Mhm.
all, if you're giving the statement for a detention center, yes, because you may have a pending AOS, but depending on what they've done on each of their individual circumstances, there may be drug convictions, there may be past immigration violations that you don't know about, right? That have not been wiped away by the pending 45. So therefore, yes, it's those people who are in trouble. So
Um,
it's a more nuanced question than just like a soundbite from a random like politically motivated officer. I wouldn't put too much stock in that.
what kind of status would I be on when the conditional green card expires while Form I-829 is still pending? For that time, what would I use to re-enter the country?
It's easy. So for those of you, once you file your 829, essentially it acts as an automatic 48-month extension of your CPR card, right? What's going to happen after you file your 829 is they will then issue you or mail you a copy of your, excuse me, 829 receipt. Once you get your 829 receipt, it'll say on the actual receipt itself, this acts as a 48-month extension. and that's what you'll be able to use in conjunction with your CPR card to go in and out and travel. If most so most 829s, ignore the processing times on the website because they're always wrong, but most 829s nowadays are seem to be approved in about a year and a half or less, right? But if your 48-month period expires for whatever reason, what you can always do is you can also um, essentially go down to your local USCIS field office, get a stamp, and get a 1 year extension. And you get that 1 year extension forever. The hope really is that by the time the 4 years is up, you already have a CPR card. But if you don't, you always have that option.
Okay. So I have a question asking about the infrastructure category.
Yeah,
And so they're saying for just, from your experience, obviously you said earlier that none of us are psychics. We don't really know what's going to happen. But just from your experience and kind of what you're seeing right now, do you think there will be a backlog in the infrastructure category?
I don't know. I really don't know. And the reason why is this. So, is there a likelihood? Sure, there could be a likelihood. Look,
Mhm.
so people are having more interest in infrastructure lately because, most of the cases being filed thus far have been in rural and high unemployment, right? Sure. So there's theoretically less of a line. However, infrastructure also has a 2% reserve, right? So it's not much.
Mhm.
So again, if you're gonna go with infrastructure, go because you like an infrastructure project, not because you're trying to like line jump or anything like that. It's
Mhm.
2%. Like how much do you? So the other thing is this: there's also not even that many infrastructure projects out there. In my whole time reviewing projects in the first few years of the RIA, there were a handful, but they were mostly marketed towards Chinese, overseas Chinese nationals, right? So, and then after that, we have some domestic infrastructure projects. I see some popping up more now, right? But what we don't know is what's the racial or nationality breakdown of people investing in them. This is why I mean, like when people spend all their time trying to forecast visa availability and everything else, you're just going to drive yourself crazy, right? So again, 2% reserve. So you do it because you like it.
Can you get your money back even before I-829 is approved, or does that conflict with the EB5 visa laws?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Which is why, again, the focus should be on a good quality project with repayment, right? So we can't control processing times. Right now, they're at historic like speed, right? An awesome speed, but they could slow down. There might be a backlog, but what we can control for, and again, I'm saying this from a perspective that has seen this over and over again. I've never seen a group of investors sad because they've been paid back. Never. I suspect I will never see a group of investors sad because they've been paid back. So I think if let's make some let me throw out a couple of assumptions here. Most of the people who are on this webinar right now, right? And I see, a bunch of our clients too. You guys are here because you guys want to continue living and working in the US. You have families. You set up roots here, right? So one of the reasons why you do EB5 for a variety of reasons. You want stability. You have children who are getting closer to 18. You want to make sure that they can go to college without worrying about the immigration status, without worrying about all the things that you had to worry about, right? And so you're going through this. And so, once on one hand, once you begin with the EB5 journey, you're done. Be at peace with it, right? And I think the hard part is done. The second part, though, is yes, I think you absolutely should look forward and try to focus on a project that is positioned to pay you back sooner, pay you back earlier. And so no project can really guarantee, quote unquote, like how they will repay you, but there are certain factors that, will make it more likely. I think
Yeah.
projects that developers that generally focus on a specific area or market, which they specialize or focus on, right? Where the construction and build out is predictable, where it's not something exotic they're doing, and they've already identified people who can pay them out in the future, are prime candidates for this, right? But each
Mhm.
situation is a
Yeah.
little bit different. Like Rupesh,
Yep.
I'm sure you have some thoughts here that you want to share with people.
Of course. So when we have one-on-one call with people, we walk through them the exit strategy because that's what is essential when and how will that they get paid back. Like we build a rental residence, so for us it's very simple. It will be either refinance or the sale of the property, whereas in other categories they use other variety of options. But again, it depends from project to project. So that's a question we need to deep dive, and we can talk one on one in detail and walk through the exit strategies. But yes, every project is different. Every regional center is different. I think generally this is my assumptions. I'm not sure how right or wrong I am, but some people still just to lock in the capital for a longer time, just say that you cannot get paid back until you get your 829 approved, which is totally misinformation. They are not telling the clients that how they should be treated. The RIA clearly says the the money is not tied to your immigration. You can get back money after you serve your sustainment period. It's completely depending on project how long they want to use the money. um, we tell them very clearly like this is the rules, but however we are going to use your money for this long with certain optional extensions if we need to. So there is nothing hidden in that, like, but it's not tied to your immigration status.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I'll give a longer answer explanation of why it's not tied in, but let me put you on the spot here, Rupesh, right? Because and also because I want to stop talking because I want to take a break. But why do you personally think, right? You can't guarantee it, obviously, but why do you personally think your projects in particular are positioned to pay back investors? In like, three points, three simple points.
Well, it's simple. We are building multifamilies and we are building for sale. So we are not planning to hold a property for a very long time. So our goal is that we build it, stabilize it, and sell it. And there is a financial reason for that is we as a developer don't bank any profits unless we sell the property, right? There is not a financially viable option for us to keep on dragging for long, which means our capital is stuck for that long. So EB5 capital will definitely be stuck, but our capital will also be stuck. And we want to take out our capital as quickly as possible. And that is only possible when we do some kind of exit strategy, whether it's a refinance or sale. So it's not just the EB5, our financial motive is also attached to it. Second thing is, if you have seen the multifamily market, the typical holding period, the longest I've seen is 5 years, right? Nobody wants to hold a multifamily asset for more than 5 years. After that, the returns are not that great as the first 5 years. So it makes completely sense. You build it, stabilize it, and sell it. And while we are still building and it's pretty new, the maintenance cost is very low. Um, that brings your NOI to a very, very healthy numbers. And that is essential when you're selling a property. A healthy NOI is what. However, if you wait longer, the buildings will age out. It will require more maintenance. Your NOI drops, and that's not a great point for you to sell the property at a lower NOI. So again, it all driven by the how motivated are you to make as much profits as possible, which we are. And I don't see any shame in saying that because ultimately we're doing this business for profit. So we want to make as much money as possible from these properties, and that is only possible if we execute discipline. We build it, stabilize it, and sell it. That's it, plain and simple. Like, we are not building
Yeah.
any hotels where we are going to keep on operating for years or years. We are just building simple. The need of the country is housing. We are building housing. We build it and we sell it.
That makes
Okay.
sense because essentially you guys are incentivized the same way, right?
Yep.
You Sounds like 5 years is your sweet spot. So the funny thing is this, what I've always thought about is people talk about the concept of redeployment, right? And I think sometimes so one a common we can do a whole separate segment about this, but
Yep.
like I talked to some of our friends about this, but there's a common almost like people ask conflict of interest questions sometimes. They ask it to me, they ask it to you. By the way, you should ask this question. Do you have any kind of like fear or any kind of like wonder if there's a conflict? But a common thing that I'm sure everyone here has heard is if the regional center or if the NC, JC developer or any combination of that is vertically integrated, is there a conflict of interest, right? Well, you guys are loaning to yourselves. How do I know you're going to act in my best interest or whatever else? But in those situations, so the funny thing is when it's vertically integrated, like you, Bukas, you're using your own money, you need to exit out, right? They're like not only you try to make a profit and sell back to investors, you want to roll that money over to build more multifamily
Yep.
projects, whatnot. But there
Yep.
are third party EB5 financiers or lenders who are third party, right? They're not affiliated with the project at all. They're strictly lenders. But I want you to consider one thing, right? So what people have not talked about when they talk about redeployment, when you look at the two categories, one, Boopless, you're lending to yourself, right? You are trying to get rid of your cost of capital. When an
Hmm.
EB5 lender, though, a third party EB5 lender lends to a project, their source of income is much different than yours, right?
That is
Their
true.
source of income is that they only make money from actually getting interest payments on the loan. So one wants to pay off EB5 money as soon as possible. The other one only makes money off EB5 interest.
Yeah. There's
Between the two,
another,
that's
yes, and
what's more likely to redeploy?
yeah, and to add
It's
to
a fair
that,
question.
that's a question actually I have with a lot of time with the investors is like some people ask me, it's a cheaper capital, so why don't you keep it for a longer time? I said, no, it is not true. Uh, yes, if a regional center is involved and their sole purpose is to lend the money to a developer, maybe over there. But in if I'm a developer, I'm raising the capital directly. I have to actually look at the cost of the capital, right? And as a developer, we always want to lower the cost of the capital. If the cost of capital for EB5 is higher than the market rate, which we are expecting will happen in next 1 or 2 years, the interest rates are dropping. It is not financial. It makes no financial sense for us to keep on dragging the high debt capital cost, right? I'll rather pay off that debt and again refinance from market at lower interest rates. So it does not make financial sense. And this is a debate I have with my CFO regularly. And he says, like, if the market rate drops, why would I carry this burden for a very long time? It makes nobody can make any sense of it. So that's another thing people need to keep in mind that if they're working with developer directly, they are not financially motivated to keep your capital for a very long time because it's going to hurt the project.
Yeah. So my point is more like I don't want people to simply again, this is when you have the rural high unemployment debate, the third party or non-third party, regional centers. What I'm saying is not always that simple to default to an answer, I think
Yep.
this is a very good illustration of that. It doesn't mean every single developer you should trust, right? Whether you guys trust Bootbless or not, it's completely up to you guys, right? Whether
Yep.
you guys trust a third party regional center or not, completely up to you guys. But those are questions that you're going to have to actually know. And I know we're going a little bit over, so let me just give one
Yeah,
more
I think we.
bit of advice. So in terms of why you can be paid back earlier, right, versus like being the lock-in period, like Bupa said, it is clearly in the RA that you only have to be invested for 2 years. So a common misconception that people have is, does that mean that my money actually has to be deployed or sent to the project? Does it mean that the project has to spend my money, right, within those 2 years in order for me to fulfill my sustainment period? There are two different sustainment periods, right? And the confusion comes in how people keep interchanging them. One is the 2 year sustainment period for EB5 purposes, and the other sustainment period is really the time you have to be invested before the project pays you back. So the sustainment period for USAS is very simple, just 2 years. And that 2 years begins from the time that you fully fund the NCE, essentially. There's no need to draw on the EB5 funds. And that's why it's totally divorced from your actual investment period, right? So, but in terms of your investment repayment period, that is NC specific. And that is what you actually have to dive into with each individual project. And not all of them are the same. Some are fully funded, that's sufficient. Some require the money to actually be deployed to the project, right? Some have a very specific lock-in period. All those things are different. So what you're trying to do is figure out how to marry the two, find like a sweet spot, and find an investment that you feel comfortable with immigration wise, and one that will pay you back in the future. So yeah.
And with that, I think that's a great wrap. Thank you again so much, Fang Lei, for being with us this evening and being such a wealth of amazing information. We would be very happy to follow up. Please do set up a one-on-one if you want to learn more about our projects. And we constantly do these, and I hope that we're going to be doing another one maybe with Neural in the next few weeks. So just keep an eye on this space, and if anyone wants a copy of this, please shoot me an email, Rima, REEMA at ZEN EB5, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Again, thank you so much, everybody, and best of luck to you with your EB5 journey. And as always, I think, we, as Fung said, this is about you, your family, and we absolutely genuinely wish you the best. Thank you so much. Have a
Yeah,
wonderful evening.
yeah. And
Take
thanks,
care.
Fong, for taking this time with us today.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Take care. Bye, guys.
Take
Okay,
care.
bye.